good to be with you, Chicago. I am Winter Lake at winterlake.com, streams QUE4.org. I usually open my show with some reads or some different music or something. But today we are going to have a really good, strong discussion about the occult. I met a gentleman, as I had mentioned, at Clutch in the occult bookstore. I think it was yesterday or something. I joined his metaphysical elemental group, and I wanted to get into some discussions with him as I found that what he was saying was actually kind of credible. A lot of different individuals I meet are kind of like charlatans, or they play it by ear and touch and go and these kind of things, which are just nonsense to me. But this gentleman seems to have something to say. So why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, thanks, John. My name is Drew Prince. Friends just call me Drew. I started a group on Facebook that I call Magic and Elemental Survival. I started it after about a few years of going to the Coffee Clutch and other pagan-associated meetings and other gatherings throughout the Chicago area. And one thing I noticed was that over the years, there's a lot of people, like you may have mentioned, higher up. Some people are the real deal. Some people are, out to help people. And some people are kind of in it for themselves. However, I found that by and large, a lot of people out there in the Chicago pagan scene are just like everyone else. They're just trying to get by, trying to do their own thing, and they're trying to make their lives a little better. And I always found magic works best as an art form. Some people take it as politics. Some people take it as, another level of religion, whereas I think people who do that generally lose focus on what they're doing. They get wrapped up in other things. And
what kind of art form are you talking about?
Well, any art form, honestly. Magic itself should be, like any religion, should be art, and art first. It should move you. It should make you. It should inspire you. It should amplify your life, which it does. When people, some people, and let's say any other form of religion, like your mainstream religions, I feel that they tend to get people like that tend to lean into the fanatical aspect when they lose the inspiration aspect of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
They get into something and they see something good, but then after that they get all wrapped up in the politics, and it gets really kind of sad after that.
I find that a lot of people that get into it, and my experience, it just ends up being a fad or something.
Sometimes.
Some kind of, it's like, I was in it, and 1 minute I'm like, a Satanist or something, and now I'm like a Buddhist. It's just crazy, stupid. I mean, is it grounding? I mean, but then again, on the flip side of that, in that exploration from a philosophic standard, I guess it is that just in its nature, exploration, trying to find what ground you're in. So, I mean, I could
Absolutely.
see both of it, and I maybe I shouldn't be so downing on it, but I find that these types are kind of annoying. They're just, they go where the wind takes them or whatever. And I do agree that magic, although my form is more black magic, is a fundamental aspect of my existence. And it's made me who I am as far as like where I want to go, and elevated my consciousness. But, it's, a thing where what works for me may not work for someone else, and so on and so on. And what I found at Clutch was even like the altruists that were there, the Kabbalists, the gentlemen that had those symbols on their jackets or something, and they're vocal,
Sure.
but they're kind of different from that. I mean, that whole scene is just, and they're clashing though too.
True.
Why do they bring the clashing? Is that, I guess that's an aspect
it
of.
It just happens when you get a group of people together who all have very strong ideas about something they're passionate about. Some people kind of like interact like we are right now, just exchanging ideas, and other people will shout over everybody because they have something to preach, and it happens. But that's what I liked about Clutch, is that it's non-denominational, and it's an open forum where anybody can learn from each other and exchange ideas. And that was also the idea behind my Facebook group, was that it's not just for the big higher-ups and the grand high poobahs. It's for pretty much anybody out there who wants to learn about magic or who's been practicing. Surprisingly enough, I mean, not everybody is a master mage.
No, nonsense.
No, exactly. Not all of us are in complete control of our lives.
No, nonsense. And who is? I mean,
right. Well, some people think they are, but sometimes they don't know themselves. And once every blue moon, I won't say it doesn't happen. once every blue moon, somebody is very honest with themselves, and they make something out of it.
Interesting.
And they do, and as Aleister Crowley taught, was that basically when you're doing your true will, you have the momentum of the universe to assist you. One idea that was thrown out a lot was that it's like a lot of people in modern society like to think that they can walk upstream as opposed to swimming. They try to go against the current because they have some idea, like it's good for me, it's going to strengthen my will, it's going to, get me a better job or get me where I need to go if I force myself against the current. But then they might study magic or Buddhism or some form of meditation and at some point they might realize, if I just learn to roll with the tide and just float it with it, this may take me much further out than I ever dreamed.
It's interesting that you were talking about this, the flowing with the naturalism or the aspects of this astral reality or something, a stream of flowing consciousness, as opposed to going upstream. In our society, and looking at it, in our rat race manufactured reality, in a sense, it is a constant that I think it's almost ingrained in a possible Christian conditioning or something that makes people want to be masochistic in the way that they press against the storm. And it's weird. And I see it out of 8 of 9 people, or 8 of 10 people, that they just want to do this. They insist that it's my way, and they'll trash themselves in doing so. They'll wreck their love life. They'll wreck everything. And they're like, it can flow this way so much easier, but maybe it's vanity or something. And I like vanity. I mean, vanity, and it has its oppositions, but it, in our issues, for me personally, I like highest and best consciousness for me as an individual. So when I mean vanity, it's on different levels. But some of these people embrace it so much where their vanity is so much more important to them than flowing and being free or being liberated into a consciousness. But, you've really touched on something here, because a lot of people are facing this and they don't even realize it. They're like, I'm determined. It's good to be determined, but you're bashing your head against a brick wall.
They're not really very honest with themselves about what their motives are. They might think that they're doing something that their families want or their community wants or their group of friends want. And I mean, honestly, I'm not even speaking magically here. When I was in high school, the worst mistakes I ever saw people make was purely for attention. And we've all done it, but I mean, some people turn into a total car wreck over it.
Ego.
Oh, it's not just ego. Sometimes they'll completely water themselves down and diminish their ego to placate their immediate peers.
Is that embracing stupidity?
Is it embracing stupidity? I'd say it's part of the learning process.
Dumbing down?
Some people do, though. Yeah, some people
dumb down, but I mean also this aspect, these attention whores. I mean, it's pervasive in our socialite internet reality. Everyone seems to want to be grabbing a headline or something.
The thing about magic is that you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Sometimes we are like some psychiatrists may say, we are the sum total of the impulses we've been...
Summation of our decisions.
Not just our decisions, the impulses we were raised with and the forces that were pushing against us, and we just kind of went with it to get with the crowd. The herding instinct is very strong.
Is that conditioning?
Yes. But when you actually undertake the magical path, you are opening your mind to a vast array of reality that you hadn't considered before. Sometimes it's beautiful and artistic, and other times it's absolutely terrifying. It really depends on your own personal, view on things, and how far willing you are to go to experience that.
And what forms of magic has elevated your life?
Mine, well, I originally, oddly enough, I started actually learning about ghosts when I was 5. I grew up on a reservation where my family comes from. We're Choctaw Indians from Mississippi, actually. And the culture was there, but it wasn't a huge part of my upbringing because, unfortunately, most of the religious institutions down there are pretty much like fundamentalist Christian. You don't hear a lot about, the tribal beliefs as much as you do about, well, you better go to church because Jesus is coming back, and when he does, your ass is grass unless you get with the program.
What
hear a
did
lot of
what
that.
did what did the role of snakes play in your Indian life?
I honestly, in my Indian life, I don't know if I would call it that so much. I mean, to me, it was just life amongst my family,
Of course,
living down there
yes,
in the South. I
and
wasn't
not
that.
passing a judgment.
No,
I
sure.
mean, in that regard, there is a
To
there.
me, it was just something to avoid. Like, I don't want to get bit, really.
Right. Well, there's something with your group. I have a vast knowledge of things, and
Sure.
I'm not ego about it. But if what I heard was correct, I believe that your Indian culture was a worshiper of some kind of snake or something. This snake was an area that is in the Midwestern area from the south, and it has its renditions in the Great Serpent Mound, which is where they had their great ritual rites. Now, these things, and I'm deviating, but it's just bringing to mind something that's creating somewhat of a synchronicity of earlier. And this is kind of what I do on the Pentacle-Hours, too. I look for synchronicities, and it's odd because I was in, not we, but I was in a discussion about this Great Serpent Mound. And the things in related to Indians and so on. If you don't know anything about it, you know anything about it. But
Well, there is a mound that my tribe believes is where basically life started, or at the very least our tribe began, and it is considered a holy place. But by and large, I mean, it's the South. By and large, it's fundamentalist Christian. The culture is there because it's been there for ages, but by and large, the people go to Sunday school or church for the.
so it's a
get their
Jesus
spirit.
Christian
Yes.
reality.
I was actually very disappointed when I witnessed the passing of some of my, my great relatives, my great aunts, and I would go back down south for their funerals, and I just wanted to hear more about their lives. Like you go to any funeral, you hear a nice eulogy about the people and how the way they touched your lives, and instead, the church that officiated the function took that time to just scare the hell out of all the parishioners and just say like, "Oh, these are the last days. You'd better go." And what the hell did that have to do with my relative?
Oh, I know. That's so weird.
I know.
So do you feel that your tribe, I mean, obviously indoctrinated? I mean, did these fundamentalists they went in? Is that still going on and pervasive in
I'd
India?
say I'd pretty much say they really, really weeded themselves into the fabric of the culture down there.
So it's wrecked. I mean,
Well, there are books, there are authors, there are stories that are told. I mean, there's people keeping the culture alive, but by and large, I think it is seen as culture as opposed to an actual system of belief. I don't necessarily, I don't live there anymore. I haven't lived there since I was a child, so I really don't know for certain. I don't live amongst it. But, I mean, people still do the artwork, they do the beadwork, they do the sewing and the dresses and the art itself, and the stories are still told, and the stickball is still played. But by and large, I didn't hear a lot about like our stories and the things that we believed in and what moved our planets and what moved our lives.
and that's what I mean. You as a seeker,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a deprivation. I mean,
Yeah.
you were deprived that.
Yeah, but I mean, I did have some strange experiences down there. Like, for instance, there's supposed to be these urban legends of the little people that live in the woods. They're about maybe 1.5 feet high. I don't know what they're supposed to look like. I can only imagine they look very tribal. But supposedly, as the story goes, they steal children, like infants, and then take them into the woods. And as the legend goes, they give you a choice. They'll show you a medicine bag and they'll show you a weapon. If the child reaches for the weapon, you're never going to see that kid again. But if the child reaches for the medicine bag, they'll show the child how to use what's in that bag and then return him to his people. I personally don't know of any incidents like that. I do know that in my 20s, though, I would visit relatives down there, and sometimes people would go into town to take care of business because, in the far south, you got to drive to do anything, to go to the store,
Yes, I
do
know.
laundry, sure. So I remember I would be left alone at my relative's house, and then all of a sudden, like, some assholes throwing, like, rocks at our window. And next thing I know, I'm, like, looking outside, there's nothing. And so
Weird.
and I'd been studying like meditation for a very long time at this point. So one night I actually just turned off all the lights and just sat there, and I literally sat there for about 2 hours, just watching, just staring into the darkness in the woods and letting my eyesight adjust. And then sure enough, there's a ravine, like a water drain or water ditch right along the roads, and something was throwing rocks at us. And I came outside and took like.
Did you have a weapon?
I had a BB gun, actually.
Interesting.
Just shot past their head. It's a little bit.
Was it a person that was looking for you?
I truly don't know. I didn't see or hear anything because I stayed outside when I did that, and nothing. I mean, it was a drainage ditch. You would had to have been up to your waist in water to like get behind the bushes to do that. And nobody in their right mind is going to do that at 10 at night in the middle of Mississippi in the woods at a dark night next to a country road. It doesn't make any sense just to pull a prank like that.
Yeah, that's too crazy. I mean, there's just, well, I don't know. There's a lot of murder happens down there. I mean,
Sure.
weird murder. People that bring people out or if they answer the door and weird games, especially around Atlanta.
There was also a scary legend down there that I had a few nightmares about as I grew older and studied magic, and it came to me in dreams sometimes, but I didn't have a personal experience of it. And I heard it's a universal motif. It's my tribe called it Nalusa Chito, which means in Choctaw the black spirit. And it is literally a full-sized pure black silhouette of a man with glowing red eyes. And it just wanders about, and supposedly it only really bothers people when they're depressed or drunk or angst-ridden or just on the verge of going insane. And for some reason, they'll see this thing just wandering about.
Do you think it's an extension of a person's consciousness, a doppelganger?
I have a few theories on that. It could be one of those. I think it also might be just simply a wandering ghost. I've been studying ghosts since I was about 5, and my theories and I'm 42 now, so over the years my theory is kind of adjusted to fit my education, but basically my theory is it was probably the ghost of someone who was extremely depressed, like clinical depression, and had no way out of it. And perhaps they took their life, or perhaps they just had nothing left to cling on to, and maybe they just withered and died. But they still roam, and they're still in that condition. They still feel that way. And I think that's why it approaches people who are undergoing something similar. I think it empathizes. They claim it eats your soul, but I think if you're in that frame of mind anyway, that's kind of how you describe the feeling, isn't it?
Yes, it is. There's a theory in Europe that certain people have encountered Judas in a very similar manner. They call it Judas Iscariot or something, as he was the renouncer, the heretic. But he comes in shade form with glowing red eyes, and when he appears, it's a harbinger of death. But I mean, these are very interesting type of experiences for people. And yeah, I mean, in Indian legend, I mean, there's so much depression, anxiety that's happened throughout the record.
The harbinger of death is a white owl.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't talk about this a lot, but when I was roughly, actually 20 years ago this week, my grandfather, who took my family from Mississippi to Chicago, passed away of heart condition. And I recall that, I mean, he had been in and out of the hospital a lot in the years before that. So about a good couple of years, his heart was failing him, and he didn't really look after his health too well. But I remember I had made a point of visiting pretty frequently back then to kind of keep up with my grandparents. And I remember one day I was having a dream, and I dreamt I was going to their house, which wasn't out of place at that time. And then I saw a white owl, like, just perched right outside their apartment. And I just remember thinking, oh no, and I woke up. And that was the week that he passed.
You saw a premonition.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, white owls, that's the first thing I've ever heard of that. But this shade creature, man, that's so prevalent and so dark.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. There's a different version of that in Germany and in Australia, and it's all over the place.
Is it just different individuals, or is it the same individual?
I honestly think it's different individuals. I've been studying ghosts long enough to get a certain bead on I have different theories about there are different types and classifications of ghosts. And I think that any person in this world could actually turn that way, or, depending on what you believe, go on to whatever the afterlife holds for you. Mm. Or maybe you just become one with the Force, who knows?
Right.
But if you are in such a state where, well, I'll give you an artistic example, and I think this is where it translates better. In most artistic examples that you see of the spirits, right, it's usually glowing. You see, like, the shape of a person who's glowing or filling the room with, like, white light. But in this case, what you have on your hands is quite the opposite. You have a black hole in a human form. And when you're around people who are clinically depressed, how would you describe that?
Oh, they carry this anxiety and
Right,
depression.
and it sucks the life out of everyone
It
near
does,
them.
yeah.
It really
Depressives, yeah.
does.
It's
Yes.
tired. I
I've been
know.
around people. I mean, I'm fairly empathic myself. I can generally feel the vibes of people in a room.
You got to shut it off
Oh yeah, you got to have your wards up. You know, it helps a lot. You also got to ground yourself.
because it'll ruin your life.
Yes, and not to go on about any one tangent in particular, but like I've had friends. You know, we live in a city. We've all done what we can to survive.
But this city is pervasive in
Oh
its
yeah,
depression
oh,
now.
it's a crazy city.
It's bad now.
My point is though, I had a couple of friends who were strippers, and you know, over the years, we have all known a few, and we all went to high school with a few even. And the thing is that I would like the friends of mine who did that to make some money, but they would practice the art. I would always advise them when they get home from whatever they're doing, when they get home, to make sure to cleanse off entirely and ground all the excess energy they've absorbed that day, because where they're going, people are going to literally channel up that energy, that lust, that anxiety, that whatever it is that they brought with them. They're focusing it all on you. You are the representative of the goddess. You are the representative of whatever it is that they desire. And it's rubbing off on you. They're focusing it on you. So if you do that for a living, it's probably a good idea when you get home to just get rid of it. When you're home, and you're you. You know, you can put on your persona on your face and your makeup and your outfits at work, but when you're at home, you should have a separate place where none of that exists.
Yeah, that's a very good advice because people are always bringing intention. And that intention is something that can wreck people's psychology.
Oh, certainly.
You know, and, you know, it's very easy money to do that. And in easy money trades, yeah, there's a lot of that anxiety and stuff.
It's not always an easy business either.
No,
You have
it's
to deal with all
not
kinds
easy.
of characters.
Oh, they're just a bunch of sleazeballs.
Sure.
And it's just, it would be horrible. But I mean, it's in the society now. I mean, it's crazy. You know, I went through certain parts of Europe and there's like women selling themselves pretty much on every corner. It's really rough out there. And in this city in particular, these people, I mean, in this state, they don't really know how depressed it really is. We're like the second to the last in the union.
Well, to bring up something I was just touching on earlier, the thing about this city is it's located directly off a major body of water in the middle of a giant landmass. And the thing about it is, and your weatherman will tell you this, my earth science teacher told me this in high school, this city attracts the heat from the south and the cold from the north. It creates kind of a wind funnel here, and it actually, that's really why it's the Windy City. I mean, people say it's because politicians here brag, and that's kind of a buzz, but the elemental truth of it is it's because this city is always in flux. There's something about the magnetism in the air around this city because of the weather we attract. And it also creates a huge greenhouse for ghost and paranormal style activity. This city is very weird. I mean, one of the most common ghost sightings you'll ever see is when you're standing on a street corner, or let's say, in my case, sometimes I'm waiting for the bus or the train, and I'll see somebody just off on my side. I'm not even really looking at the guy, but I'll see him just kind of standing there. You know, just kind of like how I see the speaker over there in this room. And I know it's there. I'm not really paying much attention, but I can see it. But then if I turn and look, and it's gone. Well, a lot of times that's going to be an apparition. That's not really a ghost, but it's really just a playback in the air. It's something in the magnetic spectrum of the air that's just playing something back. If the weather is just right, sometimes you'll get images of motion or things that happen in the air. For instance, when you used to, let's say, have VHS tapes, maybe you recorded your favorite show every week, right? Well, when you watched this week's recording, when you got home to see what episode of Seinfeld you're going to watch tonight, well, sometimes you get an outline of what was going on before you recorded over it. That's called a ghost image. That happens in the air.
Now, that's a magnetism aspect?
It is.
And why is that? Because I've seen that just in the VHS tape capturing these different images. Now, of course, we're in our digital phenomena,
Sure.
which is getting different types. A lot of play with light, more so with digital, and light that can be formulated, in my opinion. I've seen beings and things when I've taken photographs. I've been taking a lot of photographs pervasively since about mid 2013 up until now, in the exploration of some ghost things, and just to be, whatever, social. But but I'm getting weird images on them digitally. But I remember, well, I'm an occult person, and I have, clearly thousands of listeners, and there's like this energy vortex as you can feel is coming in here now, and whatever.
Dealing in the art actually definitely attracts things.
Yes, we traffic in that.
I mean, I there have been times in my life where I'm actually a little nervous to actually leave the house at all and just have a normal life and leave the house because I'm curious. I'm also anxious about the way coincidence will just fall in place around me. Sometimes it happens and it has nothing to do with you, and sometimes it has everything to do with you. I once was talking to this therapist who was just absolutely normal. To her, it was a job. I mean, she was a decent enough therapist, but she wasn't particularly insightful.
Right. Well, they keep that distance.
Yeah.
It'll wreck their own lives.
Right, but nobody's going to make an Oscar award-winning movie based on her cases, trust me.
Right,
Anyway,
right.
My point is, we were having a discussion, and I was explaining to her what I think synchronicity is. And the basic definition, I'm sure as you know, is that it's called meaningful coincidence. And she asked me to give an example of it, and I said, I can give you an example right now. All right? And this has happened to all of us. And I'll give a general example for the audience. Let's jump back to our early years. Let's say freshmen in high school, okay? Any of us, our early years in high school, okay? And you met your first love, the person who you really, like, your heart pounded over. You really felt it. And whatever the situation is, there one day came where you knew how that person felt, and that person knew how you felt. Maybe a note was exchanged, or maybe your friend intervened on your behalf, whatever. The point of the matter is, one day came where both of you looked at each other, your eyes met, and you knew how each other felt, and you ran with it. And maybe you went off to have a soda that day and held hands or whatever. Now, I can tell you in a nutshell what happened that day. Everywhere you went, everything was so much more meaningful. You heard songs that seemed like it was just meant for you two. It seemed like you two were living in your own music video. Everywhere you went was somehow an accentuation of that experience. Now, let's jump ahead. A month or two, a year, whatever. You're no longer with that person. That one day came where you two decided we're not a thing anymore. And then what happened? It almost seemed like God himself was messing with you. Everywhere you went, what did you encounter? Another reminder of that person who just broke your heart. And you couldn't escape it, could you? It's like the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where Pee-wee gets his bike stolen, and he's looking high and low for his bike and putting up wanted posters in the whole 9 yards. And then you see him sitting there on the park bench, and everybody and their mother is going by him on a bike. Everybody but him. And it's kind of like that. And her jaw hit the floor, because I said, that's synchronicity. People like to describe us as human computers or like human radios, and they like to describe, like, you flick on a switch and these things happen to you with your brain psychically. And I always found that to be, I never found that to be a very adequate metaphor. We are organic beings. We're squishy. We're mostly water. And I think that basically we're human tuning forks. You ding a tuning fork and you put it next to another tuning fork, and what happens? That other tuning fork begins to chime on the same level of vibration as the tuning fork you're holding. And I think that when we get wrapped up in certain feelings, it sends out vibes, it sends out waves, and those waves can resonate, and sometimes they come back in the forms of coincidences that fall in place around us. So when you fell in love that first day, what happened? You were so keyed up with these feelings, it was almost like the world was opening up to you.
But and also it's in the crash aspect of it.
Sure, yeah.
The crash aspect of it. It creates a synchronicity.
Yeah, that's why you couldn't escape it when you broke up with that person.
Or whatever.
You were getting reminded left and right. It was because that's all you were thinking about.
That's a synchronicity. Now, you and I experienced a synchronicity that you may not be aware of, and I'm going to tell you about it. Yesterday's show, I went through it. And it has to do with the Occult bookstore. And I guess I'll rehash it today. I was discussing it yesterday, and I'd gotten some feedback from some other occultists throughout the world, and they contact me via email at wolfloki@yahoo.com and winterlake.com. I went to the store. I was on the fence whether I was even going to go to the philosophic discussion. Decided I was going to go last minute, literally a yard or two away from the door, because you walk by and then there's a train station you can get on and go. I'm on transit as well. I just choose to. The thing is, there was a guy in the door, who was going on about something, a breakup. And it's odd because you're discussing breakups or to get meetings or something. So he was distraught over this thing. Some French woman, okay, who was an occultist who had brought him into some kind of witchcraft, which is always the allure, which is interesting, whatever accoutrement or spiritual path you're on or something. So he was talking about that, and so people have been just like sharing with me randomly, and they don't have any clue about me. It just is something that's been happening to me now, really on the increase for the past like 2 years. I have no idea why. Just random weirdos or people. And so he began sharing with me, and then I fed back into it, which I rarely do. I actually shut off. But then I went into a thing where I was like, okay, I'll share with him. He looks a little distraught or something. So he just started talking about how some initiation or something, and this French woman that dropped him, and so on and so on. So that was it, right? So I go in, and I'm sitting at Clutch or something, and remember the gentleman who was going on about how his horror is something that we had discussed, and he was going on about divination, kind of dominating the room. And there's always one of these types in a discussion. Over talks everybody, brings the ego, and won't shut up even in a questioning issue. And what I feel bad is in that philosophical discussion is people raising their hands. You don't do that. You just outburst and talk, and that's how it needs to be. And maybe that can shift in that discussion. Neither here nor there. We had that one gentleman who was dominating it. Well, it was weird. The owner or the gentleman who worked there walked up and handed him a book on the divination, oracle, horror-y thing. However, in handing it to him, the man announced, "Oh, I don't read French." And he was kind of just really, remember, he was egoist, and it was a French doctrine, okay? Mm-hmm. Well, so he had this doctrine, this book that was given by this man who probably didn't check it. It was like, just saw the topic and gave it to him, and then there was some more of that nonsense. Okay. So while that French thing went on, or while he was analyzing the book, the other gentleman, who was very similar to him but sedated, went on about his introduction into the occult being Napoleon's oracle, and this French aspect again came into play. Remember that? He's like this Napoleon's oracle, and then we had a discussion, and the other man who was holding the French book put it down, said, "Oh, that's nonsense, it's all BS." Remember, he had that response. Yeah. And then I interjected, and I said, "No, there's been bastardizations. This thing needs to be looked at." The military kept exquisite records. They had hold their foundations there. They had invaded Egypt, and Napoleon had found this article, this oracle, and was utilizing it in his warfront campaign. And as he went along, and there's this whole history behind it. In looking at the historical record, now true, it could be revision, and not to get too long-winded, but I'm on this path of synchronicity. Well, later, outside of everything, there was the people withdrew, and the man had the book, okay? So he, dropped the book or fell on it, and he, tripped on it or something. Well, I picked it up and looked at it, and it actually contained, I believe, the Napoleon Oracle in it in French. And so I gave it to the other guy in the next to me, one of the Kabbalists, and he was trying to read it, and we couldn't ascertain if that was really the thing or not, but it looked like it to me. I can read a little bit of French or whatever. Anyway, that whole circular line, not anticipated by myself, led me from the gentleman at the door, who I think walked off, didn't attend.
I think he actually had to cool off a bit because he was.
Oh, I didn't. I don't know anything about him. I'd never met him before.
He came in about halfway through the meeting,
right?
And he was kind of just dominating the room.
Oh, he was.
He's kind of shooting people down.
I didn't know anything about that gentleman.
He was getting really,
See, you're bringing something else.
Antsy.
Very interesting that you're bringing this. Go ahead. Go forward.
Some people get very antsy when they study the arts. The thing. Okay. In a nutshell, I'm not going to try to rag on some guy.
We don't know him. No, I want to know because this adds to what I wanted to discuss with you.
He was interjecting and dominating left and right.
Correct.
And his body language, I've been, in my own studies, I've been just kind of observing human nature, and I began to realize his body language was entirely, I half expected him to start breaking furniture. The guy...
Malicious intent?
I don't know if it's malicious intent, but he was so clearly... going inside his own head. Every little thing everyone else was doing or talking about was somehow pushing a button on him.
It's not Alcoholics Anonymous, brother.
No, it's not.
It's nonsense. Why is he getting so worked up?
Beats me. I'd have to
See,
ask
I
him.
didn't know if that was the same guy. Maybe it was.
Yeah, I remember he had to get up and he left the room for a long time.
Weird.
Yeah,
So
I
he
remember,
was.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Well, then I didn't know him.
It's the
So
first time I've ever seen him. Personally.
I don't know. So he had all this anxiety he was bringing. Then I
He was
didn't
curling
know.
up in a ball and almost rubbing his hands against his face real hard.
What?
Basically the kind of tics you'd expect from a schizophrenic.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, I've known lots of people over the last 23 years that I've been studying who, like magic as an art, and I've known a lot of people who, frankly, shouldn't be involved. I'm not saying they should be Christians or they should choose something, but they'd have to be more realistic about their motives and why they do something. There's a lot of people out there who think that magic is going to solve their problems for them. They don't understand that, well, you're opening your mind to a vista of or array of reality that amplifies you, like art or falling in love. It amplifies you. It changes your life and inspires you or can knock you down. I mean, it sets things in motion in your life. And quite frankly, what I've discovered is when you study the magical arts, the fact of the matter is your life gets amplified. And everything in you, everything, good and bad, will boil to the surface. And the things that you don't want to deal with, the things you don't want to think about, the things you've been avoiding, and you might have been avoiding it like a pro, okay, for years. You might have been just kept it under wraps, you kept things going all right, or you kept it balanced, and all of a sudden it blows up in your face. And that's because there's a snowball effect. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger because more energy is being fed into you, and everything that's really in your mind is really an example of you. It's a reflection of you, and that gets amplified.
So they more turn into channels.
Well, we all
open
are.
circuits.
We're human tuning forks.
Yeah.
We vibe, and vibes come back. And people aren't very realistic about their vibes. I mean, some people want to be big jerks. They want to dominate. Not that guy in particular, but I mean your blowhard types who like to walk into a room and show everyone who's boss.
Well, the loudest usually is the most ridiculous.
Yeah.
They dominate. But I'm going to just finish this. It was weird. So we had looked at this French thing.
Oh,
this
right. Coming
weirdo,
full circle to the example.
And
right.
it was just so weird. And now you're adding something to it even further with the explaining this piece of it that, where was he? And I definitely think you're pretty much psychic, so it's the same guy, and I totally concur with you. So we try to analyze it as something, and I'm kind of still looking at it because there's got to be something with the oracle that has got to tell us something, Drew. There's got to. I don't know why that is. So I know a lot of people view it as hogwash because the oracle, in my opinion, is a bastardized, simplistic version. We do not have the complete doctrine or so on because it's been revisioned through French. But I think there's something to why that might have taken place. I mean, you don't think so?
I really don't know. I can't speak for what happened with that other person.
Well, not with him. I mean, with the Napoleon's oracle itself. There's something to be utilized there. Some kind
I think
of
people get really wrapped up in the style of a thing.
I see.
Like I was saying, some people they get into any kind of religion or magic or art form. I'll give an example of this. I knew a person who was very, very free spirited, very bohemian, and a very prolific artist. I got to admit, I was always very impressed by the work I'd see her do. She was a painter, and she was, really, really good. And she was very broad-minded, and she read all kinds of things, and she was very cool. And somewhere along the line, over the years, she somehow went over and became a fundamentalist Christian. And quite frankly, she was a bit pretentious back in the day. So I applaud the fact that she decided to embark on a path to find her soul. I'm fine with that. But the example but then she started cheering on right-wing politics and acting
Weird.
like everything they want is God's will. No matter Mitt Romney to her, George W. Bush, these people were absolutely, blessed by God as far as she was concerned. Corporate and all that other arguments aside, to her, this is what is the best for the country. And I always had trouble with like her line of thinking. I couldn't believe that like she went from being so broad-minded. I told her one day that, you know, I'm not trying to put you down, but it's like you were a fan of art, and somehow you drifted from the art itself. Like, let's say you're a big fan of Manet or Van Gogh, and you love their style, you love the way it translates, you love the color, you love the impression, you love the message, you love the art itself. And then somehow you became a big fan of a very strict, unforgiving form of museum administration and paperwork.
It's just like what happened to Prince.
Yeah, and then and then all of a sudden, like, you're cheering for these kinds of paper pushers, and you're saying only in this kind of museum run by this kind of administration can you possibly experience Van Gogh. Nowhere else.
That's how it is with Prince.
I know, and you're like,
he
what?
went from having all of these women or something, and now he's just like, he wants to have a nun as a wife or
Well,
something.
he lives in, he literally, I mean, I think
he flipped out.
I think you and I have seen the same thing, the Prince World diatribe from Kevin Smith, where Prince actually met Kevin Smith and tried to get him to film a documentary for him. And it turned out the documentary was basically a recruitment film for the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I was a big fan of Prince back in the day, and then at some point he became a raving loon.
That's what I mean. He just flipped. It's this very similar thing of abstinence and
there was a day when
ecstasy.
There was a day when his art translated and made you move and made you feel stuff, and now it's almost like...
Well, see, it's this whole dynamic, though. Yeah. It's what Marquis de Sade would say would be the path of excess, and then you go to the path of abstinence. So you have these two flip sides, you know, and it's in the nature of humanity. He lived this excessive life, and then all of a sudden comes to this abstinent life. But in my opinion, abstinence is death. But I mean, it's in this literal form where maybe he was overindulgent, very similar to your painter friend. And I've seen it with a lot of painter friends.
And actually,
they flip out.
Just to touch on that one more time, so we don't diverge too far.
Move forward.
You were talking about the Napoleonic Oracle and all that,
right?
And I suppose what I'm saying is that people, that's not the message. You look into the style of it, you look at the art of it, you look at the technology of it. You don't necessarily think like, well, this was printed in this printing and this publishing and this. So who's the right one?
Correct.
That's missing the point entirely.
Well, what I'm saying, this is and to end this thing about the Oracle, I just felt that there might be a message there that could be answered. True enough, what we have in front of us in this 2014 age is some revision of some document that I think no longer exists. I don't know. That's all it was. And it was just weird having that occur in that circular synchrony within that store that evening.
Well,
you know,
the store is, it attracts all types, and they have all kinds of spells and
they do.
Charms.
Ongoing,
and it attracts all kinds of people. There are people, I think I may have mentioned this to you in the store, there are people who had no interest in the occult or magic at all. And then one day, maybe a bird whispered in their ear, and they just started getting interested in it. And they'd never even noticed, and I've seen this at Clutch, they've never even noticed the store before until that happened. They went by that corner millions of times,
right,
or on the bus or wherever, and they never really noticed it until one day they had an interest, and all of a sudden that world just opened up, and they started seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens, and you see
That's
it
beautiful,
everywhere. Yeah, it's like magic in general. The issues with magic as they, is a fundamental of my life. We can use it, to garner corners. If you think it's going to be a tower day in the tarot deck, to turn right instead of left, and try to leave aggravation. It was weird because further in that store, deviating, the Kabbalists said they felt that they had demons inside them.
That's nice.
I was like,
well, you run
from
with that.
well, from their Kabbalist exploration, and that's because
I know.
I came out in the store and I said, yeah, I'm into this, and whatever, just what I'm into, and when that worked for you, what it works for me. And then they admitted to me, is like, I feel like every day I'm battling a demon or something.
The fact is, they were fairly young guys too, though. I mean, they probably have anxieties and personal issues that they just haven't dealt with.
They got that symbol though, they're cool, like on their jackets, and
I'm a big proponent of make your own art. I mean, there's something to be said for learning something in tradition. That's fine if that's really what you believe in, or if that sings to you. But if it doesn't work out, then all you're left with is a style, and you're stuck in a style. Something I did on my Facebook group, Magic and Elemental Survival, and this is when I started studying Kabbalah. Instead of learning Hebrew and all this other stuff, which traditionalists say you have to do,
Right.
You don't have to, but they say it's best if you go that way. Instead of that, what I did was I just took the outlines of all the stories behind each card. And granted, there's a wealth of symbols in each card. That's fine. But what I did was instead, I decided to learn it in a way that resonated with my consciousness. Like chaos magic is, if it works, use it, because it's inspiring you. It's setting off something in your energy that lets you focus that way. So what I did was, let's say I started in my mind replacing the card with movies with that specific theme and message. Like you mentioned the Tower card a little earlier. Not the great. Okay, I'll give you an example right now. Not the greatest example in the world, but how's this? Independence Day. What's Independence Day famous for? The scene where the big laser beam from the UFO hits that tower and blows the hell out of the place, and that's the beginning of the end for the world. However, like the message of the tarot and like the movie, what happens? Well, the world as we knew it, America as we knew it, every nation as we knew it was pretty much over. They got the hell beat out of them by the UFOs, right? But what happened? The last people you would ever expect to rise to the occasion, turned the tide.
Right.
Yep. That's kind of the message of the tarot. It's like your life as you know it might crumble, but the good things left behind might just save you.
They might, but they also are a weak foundation. Things need
or
to be,
a whole new one.
Yeah, possibly. The tower is very destructive, and it's just different. It's a different force. I think the tower is meant to be withstood. The stronger as you endure through the storm. But going, just as we had said earlier, it may be a masochism in the aspect of the totality of humanity going against the wave. But I think towers are meant to, be overcome and live through. But it's different. I mean, and yet bring it to rubble and to make it new, true.
I think that speaks to the impermanence of life, really. I think that
life is impermanent.
It's shown no matter what you make, time will turn it to dust. Well, the things that should last and should move on is what we carry with us, what we pass on.
And I received an email. We have never really, on Pentacle-Hours, touched on chaos magic. What do you know about it?
Well, I'm not a big scholar of it, but I've read a lot about it.
Peter Carroll's work.
Yeah. Yes. I've read Liber Null and Psychonaut, which is a very good book. I haven't read the advanced works yet.
Is it relevant, though? I mean, some people say it's hogwash.
You know what, though? It made a lot of sense to me. When you get to the advanced stuff, it can become, like any system, it gets very complicated. Honestly, I like the preface, where they just literally, other people have wasted entire big, thick brick-sized books on the subject. And Peter Carroll, in the preface, in the opening 10 pages, just gives it to you. He says, here's how magic works. First, you have to learn how to focus. Well, then when you learn how to focus, you have to learn how to focus on an image. Then when you learn how to focus on an image, you charge that image. Then when you charge that image, you send it out into the universe. And, he gives it to you in such a way where you can actually see yourself doing it. Whereas, other mystery traditions, they really want to kind of bring you into the fold first and then unveil it to you like the skin of an onion as you get deeper and deeper and deeper.
Right. It was like a slow crawl, a lone descent to something.
Right.
And that's how some of these big, deep occult grimoires that are like you get by page 30 and you're like, I'm tired of reading this thing. I mean, I don't know if I have attention for 500 pages anymore. And it's not an ADD or something, but it takes a lot now to get through some of that. It's a labyrinth maze.
It could be that you weren't ready for it, or that style just doesn't particularly appeal to you. It's something that's simple,
True.
Like what I was just saying about my exercise, you take the tarot card outline, and instead of the mystery tradition behind the card, what you do is you find out what the story is behind the card, and a lot of people will actually. I bet you half of your listeners right now can probably think of maybe 10 songs off the top of their head that would apply to each and every card if they actually just put their mind to it. And you know what? They'll probably remember it better because it speaks to them now. Like, oh, that's like some people like the what do you call it? The
yin and yang.
The yin and yang.
Change.
There's one card. The wheel card. The
Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune. How about wheel? What do you call it?
But you know what?
Wheel in the Sky,
you know,
journey.
And not
You know?
yeah, and I understand what you're saying about giving recognition, one card to one song, but you know, just deviating, I think that would limit the potential of that card, though.
I could disagree with you on one aspect, and that is
Very good.
It's chaos magic, and that is when that song no longer. You might grow, you might advance. Those kinds of songs, you know. I don't know you personally, but let's just say...
No, I enjoy that.
As a joke, let's say when you were a boy, maybe you were into New Kids on the Block. Well, that might not work for you anymore. But that's the beauty of it. You can always pick something else that means the same thing but translates better. You don't have to stick with it. You don't have to get stuck with that style.
So you're saying that you could change the different momentums of different meanings?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it just... In the quantification of tarot, I'm pretty intense with it. I use it as an accoutrement to tell the future a lot, as well as some other things. In looking at it, I was doing some readings even at the Occult bookstore, and the deck that was in there, it's pretty much on fire.
I think I saw that. You were using the Thoth deck.
Yeah, that's right.
I like the Thoth deck a lot, but people also got to be aware. It's not the traditional tarot. It's not the traditional. No. It's not the traditional tarot as passed down by the Golden Dawn. The basic deck that everyone's aware of is the Rider-Waite deck.
Right.
In fact, I had friends who used to call that the Xerox tarot deck.
Interesting.
Because it was like thick, fat, blocky printing.
Right. It's interesting.
Based like on prints from 100 years ago.
Right.
Then you got the Thoth deck, or as some people pronounce it, I don't know why, but they pronounce it the Tahuti deck.
Or the Toth.
Yeah, or the Toth.
Well, nobody even knows,
did.
right? Yeah.
And what they got to realize is Crowley did his own spin on the Kabbalah.
He did.
There are a few different paths that aren't the same as the traditional paths. Some paths work better. He actually added one more. It's a very small one between, I forget the exact location, but you can look it up. And if you look at the Tree of Life in the traditional sense, and then you line it up with the Thelemic or Aleister Crowley tarot, Tree of Life, there are certain differences and even an extra path, and that it's more in line with his philosophy. I myself have actually moved on from all that some years back. I'm actually now a big proponent of Taoist Kabbalah, and what I've told a lot of people, is that the Kabbalah, it's a fine thing, it's a beautiful thing, but Taoist Kabbalah is much more basic, it's much more primal, and it's much more basic. It doesn't really focus on all the minutiae of little details, which there's a universe of them to get wrapped up in, literally.
There is.
Yes. The Taoist Kabbalah is much more primal, and it's based on the basic elements involved in reality. Very basic. Learning the Kabbalah in any tradition could be a lot like learning algebra or geometry. Whereas Taoist Kabbalah is kind of like just learning art. It's like learning art appreciation.
And these are in card form, or?
No, there's not a card form. There's a book called The Tao and the Tree of Life by Stephen Yudlov, and it just keeps opening up the further you get into it. He was a student of Mantak Chia, who was this man who basically taught Taoism, and he taught certain kinds of breathing and what they call internal alchemy, where you literally learn how to channel the energy in your body in such a way that it actually invigorates you in different ways. It's actually that's where the books on male sexual energy come from. Right. That you take the sunlight and put it through your aura and channel it in such a way where you become. And you also have to do other practices like exercise and watch your diet and things like that.
What if you have girls dance on your desk?
Well, that helps. It certainly couldn't hurt. I know that. But my point is, did this book, and it's really good. And also, another thing is it corresponds. It shocks you how, when they do the correspondence game, you can take these elements from this particular culture and line it up, and the basic proponents are almost exactly the same. It's really like amazing, and it speaks to like the commonality of the human consciousness, the little things that we all had in common that we had no idea we did.
Drew, do you think you could make it into a card form?
I personally wouldn't go that far. I'm not a tarot expert. I'm really not.
I mean,
I
don't
can't even
really
trust
have
my
to,
own readings. Of
Is
myself.
there any really experts anyway? There are no really. Cards.
There are. I mean, there are some people who like will shock the hell out of you. You know, they won't even know you, and they'll just pull out your life story.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that, but I mean the aspect of creation for a tarot deck. It seems that some kind of intuitive coming to me that you have such a broad knowledge of this particular thing, you could probably create that deck, what I'm saying.
That's kind of where I was going when I first really sank my teeth into it.
Right.
That's when I decided, okay,
I'm vibing on that.
I'm not going to study Hebrew. Well, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a song or a movie that reminds me of that, so that now I've got like a mental image. Now I know exactly what I'm supposed to be feeling, what kind of like journey my mind is on when I pick out that card. And to map it out and learn it, I'm going to pick a song or a movie that corresponds to that path or that Sephiroth or that area. It helped me to learn it better, and I did start thinking about it. I just never really mapped it out. I would like to one day, but I just never really got around to it. This is a crazy city, and to survive here, it's tough. It really is tough. Tougher for some than others, and then there's some others who get by just fine. But the sacrifices they have to make are sometimes, in the long run, really bite you from behind. And,
I know, it's weird. The city used to be a lot easier, I think.
Well, it's a sign of the times, really.
The economy is...
Well, the human equation doesn't really change. Situations will change, but humans will just be people no matter what we do.
Right.
So, I mean, I once had a friend who was just completely overwhelmed with her problems, and and she was like talking to me about it, and on the verge of a meltdown, and she was saying like, I wish I could just go back to the 1950s. Back when a time when everything was very black and white and everything was normal and and everything was nice and people were polite. And then I just looked at her in amazement. I said, "But you're black."
Yeah, right. Well, that's
why would you want to go back
issue.
to the 1950s of all places?
Yeah, it's a racial
life would be
issue.
It wouldn't be that much easier for you. I guarantee it.
Well, it's easier in her mind. In
She was
time
looking
is
for an
weird.
ideal spot.
Well, it's romanticizing the past.
Yeah.
And it's not really plighting a good future. If you're having things in your life that is breaking, you need to fix them. If you have something that is broken, you need to fix it. If you're dating a dirtball, get rid of it.
Exactly.
If people need to identify, now this is clearly self-help or whatever you want to call it in its quantity, even that has its own, using this word again, bastardization and corruptness to it, self-help programs or whatever, and rich dad, poor dad, this nonsense.
Yeah.
But this people that I have seen that are encompassed in their issues can just make little social tweaks. But it's hard to change yourself. It's very hard.
Oh, certainly.
Usually people need to have someone else change them.
And when you undergo the metaphysical path, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. You can't just say my life's going to change overnight. I mean, there's a lot of wishful thinkers out there, and they want a better life, and we all do. We all want a good thing, but it doesn't work like that. You don't wish upon a star and then your life changes like that. It doesn't work like that. You're still going to be the same person who makes the same kind of impulsive decisions that you were yesterday.
And magic changes. I mean, you can have magic and you can throw intention out there, but you have to combine it with action.
Yes, you do.
You can't just sit in your room in your dark closet with your pentacle or whatever and dance around and think you're magically going to get whatever you want. You have to get out there, and then through that initiation, you can have certain things happen in linkages.
And you have to be very honest with yourself. You can't just like BS your way through it all. And it really is there's a lot of self-improvement involved. You can't actually just say, I'm just going to like throw these out. I'm going to put together my shrine and light these candles and incense, and everything's going to take care of itself. It's not going to do that. You're still going to have to live your life.
I know. What going back to this thing about the tape, opposed to digital.
Oh, certainly. You
Do
mean
you
my
have
ghost image metaphor?
yeah? Do you
Yes.
have anything that you've looked at in the ghost issues?
Oh, I've been studying ghosts since I was 5. I mean,
Right, as you mentioned. Yeah.
right. Well, I was the child who was not necessarily. I wasn't into sports.
Right.
So I was into, and I lived in the woods at the time on the reservation. I was into Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and like weird, mysterious stuff, you know?
Right.
Thought it was cool. I would like stay up with my older cousins at night watching monster movies. You know, I thought that stuff was fascinating. And plus there are tons of stories about, you know, in the reservation about the little things out there that can get you.
Mm-hmm.
And
You don't think they're aliens?
I think they're aliens.
You think they're aliens? Because
My personal, I have a theory about that myself, though. I don't think they're aliens. I don't think they're from outer space. Think of it this way. How far away is the nearest inhabitable galaxy? We measure it by light years, don't we? Hundreds of thousands, if not billions and billions of light years.
but that's by our definition.
right,
Physics.
by our definition.
Right.
Think of how long it would have to take a UFO to get here. Then think of how long, and maybe they come here, do an anal probe on somebody, do a few experiments here and there, you know, scare some people by hovering over them, and then go home. Well, how much longer is that going to take? That's not a viable mission. And what results do you hope to get when you get back home to your alien world? Well, here's what we found on Earth billions and billions and billions of light years ago when my boss back then sent us on this mission. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, they're not traveling like that. They're not traveling long distances.
I've heard the wormhole theory or the teleportation theory.
Yeah, they can't.
That does fill in some
But
gaps.
see, you know, I'm not a UFO person, and I mean, it kind of arrived on me as a child. I had seen a UFO. I'd been contacting UFOs.
I've seen them off Lake Michigan just sitting at Belmont
Right.
Harbor.
Well, that's possible as well. That's a no joke. You know, there's a vortex out there.
No, I didn't.
Yes, there is.
I
There's
know
a
that
vortex.
I know
it's widely known.
I know about the Lake Michigan Triangle.
That's what it is.
Oh, okay.
That's the Lake Michigan Triangle through the ley line down to.
And that's on
into
the other side of the lake from us.
Yes,
I know that. It's in the Michigan half.
It is, but it's all relative in its propensity.
And they
down
have more
through.
disappearances there per capita than the Bermuda Triangle does.
Right. There's a lot of
Yeah.
weird things that happen.
I just know many nights I would go out there meditating because I grew up on the north side, and I would just sit there and just watch the stars. And a telltale sign of any UFO is they zigzag. Human aircraft do not zigzag.
No, there's definite UFO activity.
Oh, sure.
But you know, they're not there. You know, I understand, and I totally concur with your argument about long distances and where we are with things, and what their intention is. I mean, our planet could just be a giant television for them to watch, or later we're going to be harvested. There's so many different aspects to it. But coming back to my personal experience, they're really coming through consciousness. They're coming through consciousness, or they're coming through, you know, vortexes or areas where they're bending light and time.
I've heard something similar to that.
Yeah, because it would be in the true astronomical theory, it's the only plausible method. And as we're exploring now with DMT, there's a serious study going on how it can bring your mind into a metaphysical state that alters reality, and it allows the mind to perceive into other dimensions.
I like the idea that was proposed by some of these ceremonial magical groups of the secret chiefs. I don't think it's kind of a cheesy name, but it reminds me of guys in headdresses.
Oh, yes.
But that there are beings out there of power and consciousness that guide humanity in subtle ways. And I like that idea. And I remember I heard about one author who went even further as to say that actually these beings are us. They live in a dimension. We think of heaven as everlasting, that goes on forever. Well, how does that work? No time. They live in a dimension where time doesn't really exist. Everything just is infinite. So it just goes on forever. The thing is, though, a consequence of a realm with no time is that nothing grows. So I like the idea that they've seeded this planet with larvae. We are the larvae. We are the cocoons, and when our bodies reach a certain level, we become beings of pure energy and light like them and move on to their dimension. That we're all just, you know, caterpillars becoming butterflies. I think that's actually kind of nice to know that as bad as things get, we are just this beings made of this energy that will move on to that one day. And I like that.
Yeah, it's an evolutionary leap in
And it'll explain
human
a lot,
consciousness,
too.
and It would, and it's all relative, and the different realities. I've overstated this many times on my show, is that if you have an infinite amount of space, you have an infinite amount of possibility. So it'd be very
certainly.
hard to rule anything out.
Right, and with magical theory, like ambient energy is just prevalent in the universe everywhere, as far as it goes, and it can be utilized and channeled.
It's an unreal aspect, and these different ghost things. Do you think they're just leftover traces of human personality, or are they actually entities?
All of the above, actually. I'll break it down for you in a few categories. There's the most common is apparitions. Apparitions is the magnetic playback in the air. They're not really there. They're not even really alive. They're not even really thinking. They're just playbacks of people and motions that were in that spot at a particular time. And when the weather is just right, you might get a playback. It's like, the stereotype of a person gets murdered in a haunted house off some cliffside next to the ocean under a big rainy storm and thunder and lightning.
I'm dying to live there.
Right. Well, it's the atmosphere is
Oh, wait,
charged.
I kind of already live there.
The atmosphere is charged. And not only that, this guy's running for his life.
just
And
by the
so his
lake.
emotions are running wild, and he thinks he's going to die, and then he gets killed, and then he keeps haunting that house. Well, that's like a playback in the air, because he was actually, his nervous system, which is conducting energy all the time, was really hypercharged because he was terrified. The atmosphere, the weather, being off a major body of water, all that. A lot of your haunted sites have a high concentration of quartz minerals in the soil, in the ground, and the rocks around it, because that conducts waves. That's what radios were based on, quartz crystals. Now, then there's your actual hauntings. These are actual beings just wandering about. Some live in a fixed location, and some actually just kind of wander from place to place, but they can look at you and they can interact with you. Maybe you can't always see them, but sometime when you do get evidence that they're there, you can interact with each other on some level. In one way or another, those are actual ghosts. Those are the spirits of people. Then there is what the mystics refer to as artificial. There's a lot of words for it. There's artificial elementals, and they're also called egregores. And basically, it's when a group of people or a really talented mystic of some kind creates the thought of a person, or sometimes it's a demon or an angel, and they put so much thought and emotion and energy and effort into it that it almost takes on a life of its own. And then they send that thought form out to do some work. And then sooner or later they got to make that thought form disappear, because it starts wanting the energy back. It starts wanting to get your attention more and more. And there was actually a group of a scientific experiment that was performed called the Philip experiment. I don't know if you've heard of this.
No.
It was a group. I can look it up. I'll post it in my group. Actually, there was a YouTube account of it, of the documentary. I'm just saying you could find it on YouTube. And what it is it was a group of people doing a psychological experiment. The experiment was they got a bunch of people together to do seances. And for a while, nothing was happening. A bunch of people, they had nothing in common. They didn't know each other. It was a control group. And they were told, okay, you're supposed to make the table rap, and you're supposed to summon some ghost to the table. Nothing. Then they started giving them information about who they're looking for. Then they said, okay, in this house where we're doing the experiment, there was a man named Philip, and they gave the whole Harlequin romance novel thing.
Right.
He was this guy. He rode a horseback. He went to war, and he had this beautiful woman who was going to marry him, and tragedy ensued. And, she died, and then he took his life, and now he's wandering this house, wondering where the hell she is. Well, the thing was, though, when they started filling in the blanks, all of a sudden, they started getting results that they didn't plan on. They started getting taps. They started getting automatic writing. The Ouija board started moving. Stuff started happening. When the blanks were filled, they were getting a response that none of them was making happen. They just would hold hands and, call out for the seance and do what they do, and something was responding. And they believed it was Philip. The problem was with the experiment, there was never any Philip.
Huh.
But that is a textbook example of creating a thought form. You get a bunch of people to believe it's real, and all of a sudden the energy of their imagination creates something.
It's like a placebo effect.
Except the placebo comes to life.
Yeah, it's a mentalism, a mesmerism that's manufactured by the psychic power of the gatherers.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I mean, that goes hand in hand with how magic works,
Yeah, it did.
bringing intention into the stratosphere, and you're focusing. And see, that just says a lot, because if you have a group of people that want to see something or want to manifest something, that just shows the untapped mind and the ability of it.
Sometimes sometimes it's synchronicity itself too. Like you're in that frame of mind, you're so keyed up.
And they're
You
all in that
attract-
frame of mind together.
Sometimes, like what I was discussing earlier, the dark spirit. Sometimes I think that's a synchronicity. You're bringing in something that felt the same way, as terrible as you felt, and it's coming for you. I mean, when I was 24, I went to this woman who I met through the Occult bookstore and other channels, and she was a really good woman, and she was helping me with learn a certain style of meditation, where you learn a controlled breathing, and through guidance, you have to sit there and let this person guide your breathing for you. She tells you when to speed up your breathing, when to slow it down. And for about an hour or so, you just keep doing that. And then your whole body starts tingling, and then you go numb all over, and then you can't move. But you're still wide awake. And it worked. And I was in shock because I was actually having the whole visions and the whole 9 yards. And one thing that really made me kind of sad was that I was actually wide awake, but I was getting a vision under this experience. And in the vision, I saw him. I saw the black spirit of our tribe. I saw him, and it was sad. He was in a dilapidated, moldy old shed in the middle of the woods that I knew fairly well. And he was like under a moldy, beat-up old blanket or quilt. And for a being of that kind of energy, you wouldn't expect it, but it was like just running into a homeless guy,
Right.
like hiding out in the woods.
Right.
And it was sad. And I wasn't frightened of him at all. So the only thing I could think to do was I embraced him and took him into myself, and he just disappeared.
That is almost a hermetic aspect to that. I mean,
I'd heard similar explanation.
Have you ever
Please
told
go
that
on.
story to many people, or no?
At the coffee clutch at the Occult bookstore, I've mentioned it, and to a couple of my teachers over the years.
And what has been the feedback?
Basically, in some ways I was putting it to rest. In other ways, the part of myself that mirrored it, I was also kind of owning its power. I mean, my life hasn't been much happier, but I'm a lot harder to put down.
Interesting. So did you feel that this shade was on you? Is it bringing you negative curse?
It doesn't haunt me. It doesn't haunt me. It doesn't follow me. It's a part of me.
Right, but before, did it haunt you?
I had a kind of a nervous breakdown when I was 19. A lot of stress and other things.
Of course.
It was a crazy time, and my nerves were as far on edge as they could possibly be. And I did have one nightmare that surprised the hell out of me, and that was I was being chased by it. I mean, when you're in that frame of mind, sometimes your dreams will drift to a nice, happy place.
Right.
And in the dream, I was back on the reservation, going over the hills and in the forests that I'm familiar with, and that was okay. But I could still feel how tense my body was, because I was always in that state at this point. And then I was under attack by it. It was chasing me, and its eyes were glowing, and it was all black. And it was chasing me and chasing me. And as the dream progressed, I could find weapons. I could do whatever I could to try to put this thing down and try to kill it. Nothing worked. And then at some point, it actually tackled me and tried to wrestle me. And then I realized he's not any stronger than I am. And he's not like Bruce Lee. He's not like a martial arts expert. I could actually do judo on it. I could flip the thing and knock it away. I could push it away. I could trip it. I could do anything that I could to a guy my size, my height.
Right.
And it could not hurt me as long as I could keep his mitts off me. And when I realized that, it didn't have the impact it would. And I think that's kind of like a mental judo. I was like, maybe it was a form of denial. I don't know. But I was keeping it off of me. I was keeping it from taking me. It wasn't devouring my soul. It was just an annoyance at this point.
And this dark shade creature, and you later, so some 5 years later, you went through a ritual experience which invoked a vision that brought you to this space, and then you merged with it. So clearly you were in some kind of war with yourself.
Oh, certainly, yes. I like a lot of people, I had a lot of unresolved issues that I had to deal with, and that's really what led me on this magical path. I realized that the belief system I'd had growing up wasn't going to help. It wasn't going to change me. It wasn't going to make my pain go away.
This fundamental Christian reality
Sure,
is
yeah.
something.
And I mean, most of the people we went to school with were all, they were into, basically, they were Catholics or Christians.
Indoctrinated.
And when you don't practice it all, what you find is that a lot of what gets passed down is just rumors and speculations. I mean, I went to school with people who told me, when you die, if you die an old man, when you die, your ghost automatically reverts to being 32 years old. Why such an arbitrary number? Because that's the age Jesus was when he was crucified. Where did you get this information from? Oh, the Bible. Well, I've been studying world religions since then. It's nowhere in there. I don't know where they're getting their information from, but they believed it with their whole heart. It's all just it's just like half thought out.
So you had all of that
rumor.
Christian repression reality,
Right?
And you weren't allowed, or you weren't really embracing, or it couldn't find a way into your Indian heritage.
It really, my Indian heritage didn't play a huge part of it either. I mean, I've always kind of had a singular consciousness in that way. I've always been very attracted to Asian philosophy. I followed it much easier than I did any philosophy I've encountered, and I picked up on ghosts, and I could follow the metaphysics very easily as a child. I never really knew why, but I figured I knew I was reincarnated. I remember when I woke up one morning, and I was 3, and I was much, much more intelligent than I was as a toddler. I just woke up one morning, and I knew that I was starting over. Why did the lights go on at that age? I couldn't tell you. All I know is the dreams leading up to that point, I was a blank slate. And then little by little, it just kept progressing and snowballing and adding more to myself and becoming more complicated. And I was very aware of the feelings of different places. I was very sensitive to the feelings and the vibes of different places. Like one kind of room might have a certain kind of energy, and that's how you feel. And then you go to this other room, and you feel a slightly different way. And it all added up to completing who I am. And then I remember, all of a sudden, these memories and thoughts went through me at such a pace where it became blinding. And then it became almost like just a regular stream of light. And then all of a sudden I remember I woke up, and I was 3 years old, and I was in Mississippi on the reservation, and the sun was hitting me where I was sleeping. And I woke up, and I just remember my first thoughts were, what now?
Yeah.
And I also knew I would lose most of this as I got older.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that most of this, as I got used to being me, it would diminish to a certain degree. I never lost it all, but the power of that experience, was way back then, and now it's really a memory that's almost academic.
The pressure of this fundamentalism up until you were age 19, do you think that's what caused your nervous breakdown?
That was a part of it. That was a large part of it, because I was trying to cope with my reality in a way, in a tradition that really didn't jibe with my reality. And, well, there's other things. We all have family problems. We all have personal problems.
Right.
I was an incredibly bullied kid at school, and I read a lot. And when you go to
You were bullied at school?
Oh, tremendously.
Why?
For several years. Well, when you go to a school...
It's Indian people, right?
No, here in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you go to a school where most of your fellow students are second-generation gangbangers...
Wow.
And you read a lot, and you made the mistake of saying out loud during your first days at this new school that you're a pacifist, you may as well just paint a target on yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was that experience? I hear a lot of people have been bullied in these schools.
It was very hard. It was very
Not
difficult.
educated at all. These people, they're just bullies and they're gang members.
Oh, a lot of them went to jail. A lot of it's just life. Some went to jail.
Not
some
always.
Are
It
no
should
longer,
not be like that.
Some were no longer around anymore. Some went the logical route that kind of life brings
Well,
you
school
to.
to prison.
Or death.
School to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
Or death.
And you know what? And I'll be proud to say this. A lot of them actually got over it. You know what? I know some very good people who made some mistakes, and they became better people for it. They actually learned, and they, at some point, just said, you know what? I don't have to do this.
So you came off the reservation in Mississippi and was introduced into this gang-infested nightmare.
Pretty much, yeah.
And went to school with these animals, and they just bullied you. How did you deal with that? Intense mental power, brother.
Oh, it wasn't easy. I'll say that. I mean, clearly it had its consequences. You know, I dealt with it as best I could, and by and large, I mean, as the years progressed, the stress became unbearable. But it made me want to see reality much
Like
more
every
clearly.
day, the hallway
I never had
excursions.
I didn't have there was a few years where I didn't have a moment's peace. On the way to school I got jumped. At recess I got jumped.
Fighting.
On the way home I got jumped.
People trying to take
Yeah.
things from you.
Because not take things. They wanted to just beat me up for the entertainment and benefit of their friends. Because that's how you became popular at the schools I went to. You had to pick a victim, and then all the other bullies would accept you. So when they realized I wasn't going to fight back, well, that made it easy.
Wow, Drew, why did you take that path? Why didn't you fight back a little bit?
Well, you know, you grow up and you learn, and to a certain degree, you actually have no respect for people like that. And I was going to be damned if I became one of them.
No, you're clearly
I wasn't going
not.
to become like that.
Why have you stayed in this city?
It's my home.
Yeah.
And, well, if I can just go on a bit of a stretch here. Basically, we're an extension of everybody here. It ties in what we were talking about earlier with those alien consciousnesses and the secret chiefs. We are all an extension of the universe. In my studies, my meditations, the things I've learned about ghosts and the paranormal and about magic, the conclusion I came to is that when you dream, you see other people. We all do, right? Well, did you ever stop to think for a moment that those dream images of people actually have dreams of their own? They have life goals, they have aspirations, they have things they love and hate. They have lives of their own. And maybe they disappear when we wake up. Maybe they don't. Psychologists and Jung and others will tell you that these are really just images in our heads of thoughts we have. They're an extension of ourselves. Well, that's true. On another level, though, I believe personally that each and every one of us is a thought form of the universe, the Earth and possibly the universe. The Earth itself lives, breathes, thinks, experiences, and learns, and it just experiences everything through us. And we are the thought forms of the universe. We are the dreams of the universe. And I think when we die, I do actually believe we go on to something else. I don't believe we're here for a purpose. I think our purpose is just to exist. Our purpose is to experience. We're serving our purpose. The Earth itself and the universe is learning through us. It's dreaming through us. And when we go, we merge back with it like the Force. We go back into the universe. I mean, that's part of my Taoist training coming through. And I believe also that ghosts are the memories of the universe.
But you're in this dynamic, this city, by the time you're 19 years old, coming out of this horrendous high school butchery, the barbarity.
It was grade school, and then a little into high school.
So high school, it resolved itself?
I made enough friends whereby the people who were really stupid and bad had a certain amount of resistance. So I did get the breathing room I needed to actually get a life. And I will always be grateful for the friends I had who were stuck by me through those years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it got to this point, this level, this brutality in the school.
If I hadn't met them, I probably would have been a teen suicide.
Wow.
My
You
freshman-
really stick to your pacifism.
Well, no, I mean, I learned to fight eventually, but...
Oh, so you're over that.
Right, but the overwhelming odds were just tremendous, really. I mean, when you got a group of 5 or 6 or more chasing you every single
Why
day.
are they doing, well, no, I mean, you've answered that question, and the perplexity of it is that you were an easy target. That, I mean, it goes against everything I believe, I'm like pretty intense, man. I like, I know you don't know a lot about me, but I'm like, study mankind's inherent evil, and I study it into its depths, and I look at man's inhumanity to man at different levels and scales of reality, and I've written books on it and international whatever, and I've established myself on the premise of strength and black magic might and so on. But it's with the issue of not trying to convert or not trying to really create genocides or anything. So it's some extremist thinking on my part. So you're coming from this diametrically opposed position, and it's making me revel a tad, and it making me see more into that altruistic aspect. And you're not the only person that said they've gone through this experience here in this area. These I don't know what's in the upbringing. These people, they're all messed up.
I wouldn't go so far as to say they're all messed up.
Not all, yeah.
Right.
That's a big totality.
There are pockets where sometimes you get the breathing room you need, I mean, I've known people who moved here from elsewhere or back and forth, and they'll tell you just the feel is different. And it has to do with the climate and the place itself, too. Like I said, there's a certain vibe to living here. There's a certain way of living here. There's a certain feel to it. And, with basic
it's rough.
It can be. That's part of the reason why I started my Facebook group was because I'll be the first to admit I am not a community leader by any stretch.
No,
I'm not a giant reverse shaker.
In that either. No.
I don't want any sycophants. I don't want people to kiss my butt.
I don't want to be.
I don't want to be surrounded by phonies or yes men either. I want to live my life as well as I could. And if I can pass something along to help others, that's great. The little things sometimes will save you. Sometimes you'll be that's the way life is, and that's the way this city is. It's like sometimes it overwhelms you to an incredible degree, and just when you think it couldn't possibly get any worse, just the one thing you needed at the right time at the right moment.
Isn't that just how in life?
And all of a sudden,
generality though isn't. I mean,
I did have a medical physical experience of that once. I didn't even know about this at the time. I discussed this once with Ursula Bielski, who's the Chicago Ghost Tour conductor, and she wrote several books on the subject. And I attended one of her seminars, and I was unaware of this ghost that's in around Chicago, about this young girl who was ill, like 100 years ago, or I don't know how long ago, but you get the idea. A long time ago, she was well off. She had the best of care, but she had a terminal illness, and her dream was to bring peace to the world and all that nice stuff. And she wanted to shower the world with roses, and her family did well enough where she could have the maid bring in fresh roses every single day by her bed. And she was really ill, so that was the least they could do for her. So when she died, she went around people practically sanctified her. There is actually in a cemetery or a site where people pray to her. And basically, when you know that she's working on your behalf, inexplicably the smell of roses will come out of nowhere. Well, when I had my big breakdown, it was right before winter. I was pretty much alone. I had lost a girlfriend who meant the world to me, and she really inspired me, and I never knew love that intense in my life. We can all say that when we're young, but I've never been with anyone. I mean, I've been in love since then too, and I've had relationships, but it's never been like that. It's never the really big one in your early years is the one you never forget. And I never forgot her, and I wish her well. But there was that. And
why did she leave?
That's another story entirely. That's a whole different radio show. But anyway, that's and over half my lifetime.
And I'm dying to know why she left.
It's a long story. But anyway, back to my point here. I was all kinds. I'd gotten out of high school. The job market was crap. Bush had just taken over. Bush Senior. There was the vibes in the air were so intense. Yeah. I mean, and it was hard. It was very, very hard. So one day, and I hate winter.
Yeah, I do too.
It's cold. It's wet. It's rainy.
I like parts of it.
I was pounding the pavement looking for a job.
Wow.
Parents were wondering when the hell I'm getting out of the house. That kind of thing. Right. And all I could think of was throwing myself up the nearest cliff.
That happens.
I mean, the pressure just never left me at that point. And I was out. It was cold. It was dark. And I went somewhere downtown. I forget exactly where, but I was pretty close to the railroad tracks. I remember that. And it was a blizzard. And it was coming down hard. And I was absolutely head to toe soaked. And it was at least 10 below out. At least. And the wind was hitting me really hard. And I was miserable. Okay? And plus...
you were making yourself miserable.
True, but when you're at that age, you can't. It doesn't feel like a conscious choice either.
Right, you're driven. Plus, you went through the breakup.
All my and everything I'd been dealing with the years prior to that too. I mean, the bullying and everything else took its toll.
Did the girlfriend stick through the bullying, or did that pull you out of that?
That was a different era of my life actually. The bullying happened earlier before I met her.
Right, interesting. Yeah. So she
was in my late teens.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
So anyway, and. So I was at the well, to make it short, I was at the threshold of all the pain I could stand. That's all my mind could focus on, was everything that was like tearing me to pieces. And I was cold, wet, rainy. The future was bleak. And all I could think of was just like, you know, when you're in that frame of mind, taking your life makes more and more sense.
It does.
It does. And then, and I knew that I was literally at the peak of all I could take. And then all of a sudden, I was in the middle of a blizzard. All of a sudden, I was just standing there, and all of a sudden, it was warmer, right where I was standing. Not a whole lot, but just enough where it was bearable. And it was accompanied by the smell of roses. And I was looking at all the snow that was coming at me, and it was arcing just right around my immediate area, right around my personal space. The snow was like no longer like just raining down on me. It was like actually kind of giving me a bit of room. And I was like both amazed and just a little bit pacified by that. I still had all the same problems, but I wasn't at the threshold anymore. I got just a moment to breathe when I was at my absolute worst.
Interesting.
And I think I attracted the ghost of that girl who, like, they say she wanders in and around Chicago and she hates to see people in pain.
Oh, it makes complete sense. Was it near the area where she died?
No, she's actually in the suburbs somewhere, but her ghost has apparently been reported all over the city and around the suburbs too.
Interesting.
I know, I was in shock actually. I couldn't believe, I mean, it was such a weird experience, like it took my mind off of my problems.
Did that pull you out of it?
It did. It did.
Did you go through a shift in that providence?
Well, I didn't go over the edge. And sometimes that's the best you can hope for.
But it changed you. You went through that experience, and it popped you out of it.
That was right after I'd made a conscious decision to start on a more spiritual path. Everything I'd believed in and thought I believed in and was trying to hold on to wasn't working out. It wasn't going to help me. And then I realized, and I was basically reduced down to my elements. And I was just like, well, what are your strengths? I actually know a lot about ghosts. And
right, and that's what you evaluated then.
And I actually follow Asian philosophy.
Well, you experienced a ghost.
Yeah, well, lots of them actually.
But I mean, you experienced that ghost at that time that brought you to Providence. It brought you out,
and I see them around the city too. I mean, I look around and sometimes I'll see them and they'll vanish.
Right, the peripheral visions you were mentioning.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you go to Jackson, the Red Line Jackson stop, go there at about 2 a.m. And I guarantee you, every now and then, you're going to see somebody waiting for the train, and then when you turn, they're going to be gone. I've seen it over the last 20 years. I've seen it on numerous occasions.
There's a lot of odd things. Oh, yeah, people are jumping off the train and jumping on that rail.
Oh, well, what happens, too, is that you got to take into account just the practical aspect. There's a lot of homeless people out there who have nowhere else to go. They get stuck out there. So some will sneak into the train tunnels. It's an obvious shelter.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as long as you don't get caught, you're at least warm for the night, or at least warm enough.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah. And not to mention, let's face it, I mean, I've had friends who joined the police force, and they'll tell you, this time of year is a very common time to find, like, the bodies of homeless people who froze to death. Then, like, in, like, abandoned houses, or there's that spot right there on the river off of Lake or Wabash, where the bridge is, and there's those towers. Sometimes homeless people break into those towers and crash overnight, and they'll freeze to death. It happens all the time, especially in this time of year. And we were having a discussion about this time of year at the Occult bookstore. And I was telling you that in Taoist philosophy, the winter is the death season. This is the season where life actually does not expand, it contracts, it reduces. It's the cold and all that is not conductive to expanding life.
Yes, it is. It is a dark time, isn't it? Time of Persephone's
and
departure.
That's why it's important to, like, take in natural sunlight, because your body needs vitamin D to keep you from going into that clinical depression.
There's a lot of psychic vampires that come out this time of year too.
Oh, they're all over the place.
A lot
all
of
year
needy
long.
people, you know.
Not just needy, but people who actually dominate and thrive based on finding victims. You know, you'll find that a lot in just like macho, bully culture.
Gosh.
You know, I don't always like dealing with contractors because, quite frankly, I don't like being hard-sold. I don't like somebody like barreling down in my face
Wow.
subtle, and they might not be threatening you, but their body language, their voice, there's something intimidating about them because they'll come at you like they know better than you.
Oh gosh, they'll just shout
know?
you down.
I know. I once had a guy try to sell me a lock that was like nearly 100 years old. And he's just like, yeah, but the collectible value of that is this, that, the other. Go. So what you're trying to tell me is you want to sell me a crappy lock that's over 100 years old. If you're selling me like an antique, you can use that argument. We're talking about a lock for my home.
It's not going to work. It's something he's
you
got in
want me to
his
buy that?
truck.
Really?
It's garbage.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody could pick it, or 5 keys exist for it.
And I'm sure he has those 5 keys.
Yeah, and then somebody comes back, and it's all nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. There's so many of these shysters around.
I know.
Selling this thing to stupidity, and people buy into it,
Oh, certainly. It's
really just like almost a Christian racket or whatever. Everything's a racket.
Well, that's why I think I like the metaphysical approach, and that is that, well, the common consensus amongst metaphysical paths is that those who know don't speak, those who speak don't know, and there's so many levels that could be taken on. People who are blowhards who talk all the time, sometimes they might even know what they're talking about, but the experience has been lost because to them it's all just something to talk about, something they can get attention from, some kind of jargon they can throw out there. When you don't talk about a metaphysical experience, it's more of a reality to you. It's more special to you. Like maybe you got the girlfriend you haven't introduced to all your friends yet because you don't want to ruin that.
I guess. I don't know. I can't go down the street without having somebody pull on me. It's not like I'm some stud or something. It's just getting stupid.
Oh, it's weird. That's another synchronicity too. What about when you meet the person that you really like? Like, okay, let's say you're absolutely alone. You're just single, single as it gets.
Yeah.
Then you meet one person who's okay, and then like, hey, and you start dating them, and you're like, okay, fine. And then all of a sudden, all these people who are much, much more interesting, attractive, intelligent, and much more fun to be around than the person you just started dating, they all pop up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they think you're great. And you're like, where were you like a week ago? Now I've got to be the bad boyfriend, and I'm dating somebody I'm not really all that into, and I'm going to be the jerk because I don't, because now I'm losing interest, and all these other better people are coming out of nowhere. What the hell?
It's the nature of this city, man. It's either some kind of log jam, or I don't know what the hell's going on.
Well, the city's always in a bit of flux. There's something to the nature of the magnetism in this city. I mean, not to mention, some people will say there's been the Great Chicago Fire, so there's all these people who died in the fire wandering about. There's all sorts of levels of this city that we don't know about because they got buried under all the ash and rubble.
I know.
And they're still uncovering stuff they didn't know about,
But they're not. They stopped looking. This current state is just an administration going forward, rolling over everything. Yeah. Very similar to what you said, just pushing against the waves and the people, the citizens are the commodity. It's just nonsense that's going on. Have you experienced any other ghost phenomena?
Well, yeah.
Go into two more. I had an email that somebody was asking about if you had any more insight into that.
Okay. Was there anything more to their question about it?
No, just said, do you have any? You said you had known several different ghost experiences. Just go into 2 more, Drew. I'm curious about it.
Let's see. What leaps to my mind? Sometimes it gets jaded when you encounter it often
because
enough.
You're out looking. You're a hunter.
Well, I'm not.
Or you're
I'm
just
not
finding it.
I'm not an investigator, but I've always got my eyes open.
So it's arriving.
I kind of see it.
And I believe you.
A lot of one example I said was a lot of times, like I said, I'll see it on the bus or the trains. I see that so often, I've actually kind of just blew it off now. I was like, oh, right, okay, whatever.
Now, what is that? Is that just people trying to contact you, or just you're just aware of it?
Honestly, I would have to say those are apparitions. If they don't really interact with anything and they don't seem to respond to anything, then it's usually just an image. It's just something that's just in the air. I was living in this. Well, I had a funny incident when I was 20. I was getting absolutely drunk with a friend of mine.
Right.
And their house was very Japanese style. They had rugs and throw mats and pillows everywhere, but no real furniture to sit on.
Weird.
No, it was kind of cool, actually. It was very grounding.
Well, it's just different for a Western house.
True. Oh, sure.
That's
yeah.
what I meant by my
Yeah.
weird.
And they had
Go
books
ahead.
on every subject in the walls everywhere. It was beautiful.
So they were highly educated, or at least
yes,
sought to be.
yes, very.
Interesting.
I grew up with these people, and I always really admired them. His parents
Were they
amazing people.
Asians?
No, I mean if they were Caucasian, but
Interesting.
yeah, but they're pretty much self-taught. You know, they had
Self-educated,
books on, yeah,
some
well,
kind of
they went
thing,
to
yeah.
they went to college and all that, but
Right.
everything they needed to learn, they learned themselves. They learned about carpentry and architecture and woodworking and
Self-taught.
medicine too. One of them went to med school.
Wow.
They had a human skeleton they bought from a medical school from India in the medical section of their library.
Wow.
Yeah. So one day we were like tying one on, and I know this was a ghost because there was stuff going on in the house. Sometimes in the neighborhood, like there was stuff going on and you could feel it, because they had no furniture to sit on. So we would be sitting cross-legged on the floor on the carpets, and when something walks in, you know, you can feel it on the floor next to you as it's walking past you.
Weird.
Yeah. And one night, me and my buddy were tying one on, and he was in the next adjoining room. We're going to crash for the night. So he's in the next adjoining room. There's no door there, so I can hear him. Like he's only 10 feet away, and he's just like setting up his bed and getting ready to crash. And I'm in the next room. I'm on the floor. I'm surrounded with pillows, and I'm just lying down. I'm comfortable enough, and I can feel it and hear it. Something walking up the stairs, just thump, 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 walking up
Weird.
the stairs, and then it walks up right over me, and I can hear it breathing.
But you couldn't see it.
I wasn't looking. Actually, to be perfectly
You were
honest,
shut off.
I was so drunk on Jack Daniels. I actually just
Well, then it could
I
have
had the
been,
headache.
It
No,
can be ruled out. I mean,
it can be argued. I mean, I know myself well enough to know that I'm not that delusional. I don't have I don't have hallucinations. So as drunk as I might be, I'm still well aware of where I am. I mean, I haven't walked into a bus over the years.
right, of course.
So I'm lying there on the floor, and I can feel it walking up the stairs. I can feel it walking to the room. I can hear it breathing right above me. And I've got a headache at this point. I just want to go to sleep. I actually just say, you know what? This would be very interesting, and normally I'd be totally up for this, but I can't. Right now, I just need to sleep. I can't handle this right now. You know, and then I heard it like turn around and walk away. And I found that a lot of times when you deal with ghosts, what happens is they're just people. And ghosts basically exist in the same state you and I exist when we're dreaming. When we're dreaming, we move from one locale to another, one place to another, one adventure to another, one situation to another. Sometimes there's a rhyme and reason to it, sometimes there isn't. And even if we ask ourselves, what are we doing here? It doesn't make any difference because we're along for the ride. We got to do it. That's the frame of mind I believe that ghosts are in. They're in the same dream state we're in, only they're just wandering around without a body. So to them, they might wonder, why don't I need any food? Why haven't I eaten in a long time? Why haven't I needed to go to the bathroom?
But it's an existing personality that needs to go somewhere, or where would they just are on this?
I think it's entirely
space.
Personal. Some people aren't. Some people, there's some people you can't.
Entirely personal.
There are some people that you can't tell. You can't tell them that a man walked on the moon. They don't want to hear it.
I know, isn't that
right.
crazy?
I know, but so then. It's not a stretch here. There's some people out there who, well, you died. No, I didn't. I'm still walking around. I still see stuff. Maybe I'm just dreaming right now.
Wow.
That's the frame of mind they're in.
Yeah, they won't let it go, man.
Some people, and they might not. It might not even be a blame game. They can't even just say, "Well, I'm just stubborn, and that's the way it is." Sometimes they're just not aware, And then maybe sometimes over time they'll kind of move on. And I do have one more example. It's a little more recent. Some years back, I used to work in a hospital cafeteria, and I worked at St. Joseph's Hospital right there on the lake. And I was working the serving line one day, and out the corner of my eye, I kept seeing a man standing right by our storage closet, and I kept seeing him using my peripheral vision. Now, normally I would consider this an apparition, except that he was there for hours and hours throughout my entire shift. He was there. And no matter what activity was going on in the cafeteria that day, he was always right there, but only out of the corner of my eye. So I decided to wave over this woman I trusted. She was a nice woman, very broad-minded, very sweet. Doesn't really know a whole lot about this stuff, but she just takes it on faith. It's a big world, and this stuff happens. And she understood, and I knew her well enough. She actually trained me there, so she knew well enough that I'm not crazy and I'm not delusional. And I'm not going to try to do something to scare people just for a buzz, because what's the point in that, really? So I wave her over, and I say, can you come here for a moment? And she's standing right across the counter from me. And she goes, yeah, what's up? And she thought it was work-related. And I go, just don't move. Out of the corner of your eyes now, is there somebody standing over there by the closet? And she didn't move, and she looked right at me. She goes, there is.
Weird.
And I said, good, it's not just me then. Okay, all right.
So it was a real person.
Well, it's a hospital, too, right off the lake. People die every day in these places, so I imagine, anyway.
Huge residual energy.
I imagine the guy was just wandering about, wondering what's going on. So all day long this is happening still. And by the end of the day, my shift, I'm cleaning up the place, I'm locking up, I'm wiping everything down, and he's still there. I'm actually kind of annoyed by this point.
You didn't talk to him?
I did. You would believe I didn't say, oh, shade. I hate that.
Right.
Oh, shade of darkness, I summon thee, and I
Right.
command. I hate that. You know, they don't know they're dead. So it doesn't make any sense
So
to
you didn't
do
say,
the whole,
go to the light.
Right, I didn't do the whole ooga booga, because that doesn't make sense to me. So instead, you know what I did?
Go to the light.
I treated him like a customer.
I see.
Sir, the cafeteria is closed for the night. The register has been closed. No more food's coming up. I'm locking down this place, and in a few more minutes, I'm going to lock the doors. There's nothing else to do here. The cafeteria is open 7 days a week from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m. 7 days a week. You're welcome to come back anytime you want.
Right.
But right now, there's nothing else going on.
And he left.
Never
Did he
came
vanish?
back. He never came back.
He never came back.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we are going to conclude the Pentacle-Hours this Freya's Day. Appreciate you all listening in. I'm Winterlake at winterlake.com. And Drew, appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to remind people that I have a Facebook group, Magic and Elemental Survival. The purpose of the group is to share information, either information that helps you get along in the city or helps you along your path. And I'd appreciate any contributors who want to come in and just make posts. Also, not just myself, I have a co-administrator, Summer Hale. She has her own business called Holistics by Summer, and she does Reiki and acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and she's an incredibly good person, and I would definitely talk to her as well.
Awesome. Reiki is very much coming on the forefront. You know, a
Oh,
lot
yes.
of people like look down on it or something, but now it is a real, it's something that can definitely get you
It's
out of the
taking
doldrums.
the energies of your body seriously in terms of your health, and that's also what Chinese Taoism is about too, in Taoist Kabbalah. The Chinese elements in the Taoist Kabbalah correspond to your different organs as well. And there are also different meditations and sounds you can make that stimulate certain organs.
You have to believe in that, though, don't you? Or does it even require
that's the beauty
belief?
of it.
No, I guess you don't.
It's an experience. When you're actually doing a certain chant, you can feel the reverberation in specific key areas of your body. You can feel the difference.
So it doesn't require your belief.
No, it just requires your experience and your work.
Well, very good. And everyone have a good weekend, and we are signing off.
Thank you for having me.